Hello and welcome to Talk Like That. I'm Cate Conway and today I'm joined by Brian John Spencer. Brian is a writer and an artist and he's here today to talk about his various elements of his work. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to start by giving us a bit of an overview of what you do?
Yeah, okay. I put it like this. I'm a grammar school boy with a writing and drawing problem. So
Why do you say problem?
Because it's not expected of a young man that goes into what is really the sort of the training for the elite in our society and community. You're expected to be a lawyer or a doctor or something traditional like that. I of course went down that route and trained to be a lawyer, not because I wanted to, but because it was, like I said, it was expected of you. And did everything, got my degree, and but the writing, which I always loved, and the drawing, which I always loved and always did, growing up from a young age, they tried to kill it off and asphyxiate it, but it sort of burst out. Even when I was doing my law degree, I always doodled during lectures, and with the opportunity of the extended period of unemployment when I graduated in 2010, when sort of the economy was at peak depth, I just started doing. I let it free, the drawing which I had and the writing which I had to date, or that date, sort of covered over.
You try to suppress that. So
yeah.
Tell us first a bit about the writing and then the art. What is it you write?
I always talk about my invisible mentors and the unseen guiders who I look to. Locally, it would be someone like John Hewitt. Also, someone like down south, you had William Butler Yeats, and it was always said that Hewitt was troubled into utterance, and someone said about Yeats that Ireland hurt you into poetry. So the writing was something I always did growing up, but especially when I graduated and couldn't get any work, and sort of graduated and sort of awoke to dysfunction and instability over here, that I was sort of troubled and sort of hurt into writing. So initially, when I went public, published my writing, it was about the economy and youth unemployment and culture and maybe the lack of culture.
And so was it articles you were writing or poetry, or what was it?
Well, I feel incredibly lucky to be living in the age we are. So it was online and it was really eclectic. It was everything from, well, it wasn't poetry. That would be something I would have done privately, and less of. But with the internet, it was so unconstrained that I could just write about anything.
So where were you putting then the writing at the time? Then you said it's on the internet. Where did you put it?
On my own blog. There was Queen's University Belfast had a newspaper there on their blog, on local political blogs, and from that it's sort of been ever since I became a sort of self-directed individual doing my own stuff as opposed to waiting for something or waiting to be given a job. I just wrote and started my own blog, Queen's blog, local political blog, then Eamon Malley, and then Huffington Post, and just through action, it seems to, as enthusiasm breeds enthusiasm, sort of activity breeds activity. So
when you were putting articles on blogs and your own blog and other people's blogs, were people commenting and was it instant feedback?
Very little at first, because maybe one, you don't have the spark or flair to your writing. It's probably a lot thicker and boring and tedious. But with practice, obviously, it gets better because it's lived out. But also what I found, and again, another one of my sort of invisible mentors, George Bernard Shaw says, the secret to success is to be controversial and to be outspoken. So as soon as I maybe touched on more nervy subjects, that certainly started to get the feedback. So editorially, my writing changed from being very sort of passive and observant and more compliant and just sort of probably boring, to being more outspoken and forthright and direct.
So you're poking the fire a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again, the Yeats thing about being hurt, Ireland hurt you into writing, just something came over me maybe about a year into my writing where I wanted to just say things that people were thinking but not saying.
Okay. And what happened when you did that? What kind of thing did you say?
Well, then you're right in the furnace, and I took it to it's I don't know how to express it, but Northern Ireland certainly it's renowned for its disrenown in some areas, and its disrepute. It's the ill repute that it has for the dysfunction politically, and in the summertime when you have the rioting and the marching, which intimidate tourists and things like that. So it was little things like looking at reports that were saying maybe tourists, when they were at certain cultural events, found it a little intimidating. So just stuff as plain as that, but most people wouldn't say that. And but that got a reaction, and not
What kind of reaction? What do people say?
You're a snob. Oh, you're just middle class. Just the usual negative feedback. But if you're getting feedback like that, a lot of people, yeah, obviously don't like it, but there's a constituency that do like it and want to hear that and want it to be said.
And how did it make you feel when people were saying that? Did it change you in terms of how you approached your writing, or?
No, it spurred me on and galvanised me, and it taught me that you can't sit in the fence. You have to have opinions, and you have to just be, principled on those, and take a stand. Find the facts, and just show them. And
what other kind of writing were you doing? Was it all blog stuff, or was there other?
A lot of it would be cultural as well. I would write a lot about art and writing and history and politics. Little things like one I wrote recently, which would be quite typical, was on, again, my sort of invisible mentors, because as a writer and an artist, I have to be prepared, and because all the world's a stage, but most of us are desperately unrehearsed, and we don't have the ability to recall stuff. So I would talk about how Oscar Wilde, apparently he was very eloquent. Someone said when he spoke it was like listening to verse, it was actually listening to poetry. But what someone said was it's actually a lot of hard work and graft. He spent his whole day learning that off by heart and reading and immersing himself in writing and thoughts and ideas, and then going out at night time and like the whole world is a stage and let people hear it. So I would write about that, just really interesting stuff, and maybe the history of Northern Ireland, history of some of Northern Ireland's lesser known writers and spiritual cultural creators.
And this was what was going on in the blogs as well?
Yeah, as well as being confrontational and
okay, so as well as having opinions, you'd have written pieces that were, oh, this is what happens at cultural festivals, and then I'm thinking about these things at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm sharing it with you type stuff.
Yeah, because it all informs and feeds off one another.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the art then.
Yeah.
Tell me what kind of art you're involved in.
As a young person, I always remember seeing, obviously, the Beano and the Simpsons and Wallace and Gromit. But what really sort of electrified me was a local artist called Roel Friars. And he was, and many of maybe people who have 35, 40 would know him and know his work. My parents brought home a bit of work he'd done. It was actually V and Paisley, and it was just a scribble. And I saw that, and it was like almost like when you hear the bagpipes or the banjo, it sort of got the hairs on my back stood up, because it was just so primal, carnal, or something about it. So it was that really got it for me. And I remember,
so it was just a tiny scribble that represented.
But it was so him. It didn't look like him, but it was him. It was his soul, and it was his character. Then I would have copied that. I remember copying that out, and I remember then looking at the ones of John Major, as I would probably be like 6, 7, 8 or 9. I remember John Major and drawing him with his big lip, and Tony Blair with his big ears. And so I was always drawn to the satirical illustrations. So
tell us about how you put your art into practice then.
Well, someone actually said to me recently, do you exhibit anywhere? I said, no, I don't have enough time. But then a thought just came to me just straight away, was because what I do is very much in situ, in place, in bars, in the community, in people. So I was like, actually, I do. I've got an exhibition all around Northern Ireland and Ireland, because I just give out my work and it maybe goes on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us about that. Tell us about, because obviously it's the live drawing you're talking about.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. Put it into context.
That's the live drawing. That's carrying on that Roel Friars being another invisible mentor, me carrying on that legacy and heritage, which he created and inspired me with. So, like him, I would go out into bars invited to birthdays or invited to weddings, and I draw people. So I just draw someone. But it's a cartoon or caricature, so it's not necessarily. It'll be true to life and it'll be a true representation, but it'll be with a little sort of not nasty but playful twist. Like I said, I would give a lot of stuff away for free, and my gran, who was like Thatcher, works in Pound Ounces, and she owned a pet shop. So if you do work, you get paid for it. So she would always give it off to me about, why are you giving your work for free? But that's part of the process. We work now in this sort of interconnected world by giving it out free and putting my work out there. People see it, awareness grows, and from that I would again be approached for commissions. Or approached to go to a wedding or a conference.
So tell us about, you've said you go to bars, and I mean, I know personally you go to a butcher shop that I go to, and that's how I came across you in the first place. Tell us about how that comes about, and then what happens when you go, and because it's such an unusual concept. I mean, I don't think I've seen that happening anywhere else except maybe at weddings, as you say, when people hire a caricaturist, but even that's quite rare. So whenever you go and you set up and say it is the butcher, say it is Murphy's Butchers on the Lisburn Road, where I know you've been a number of times. What happens? You go in, and how do people react, and what happens?
Well, it's a great social occasion. It's a great sort of community ritual. There's something again primal about it. Right back to the coming together when people were drawing on cave walls. There's something about drawing. You can take a picture, it'll be 100% exact, and it's just so normal every day. Whereas when you draw someone and you get a nice sweet spot on it and it looks like the person, it activates something in someone when they see a drawing that I've drawn of their friend or their father or their mother or their cousin. Their belly starts shaking and their heart starts warming, and it's infectious, and I feed off it then. But also why I do it, not only because of that. Strangely enough, artists, the real hazard of that profession, the real danger is procrastination and stasis and non-productivity, because it's the nature of an artist. When you're not accountable to anyone and creativity, you can't plan it. And I used to suffer from that a lot. I was a sort of solemn suffering artist working behind closed doors, and you get nothing done. You get a commission and you think about it for 4 weeks, spend another 4 weeks sort of doing a practice one, and then eventually 10 weeks later you got it done and you're not happy with it, and it's been agonizing. Whereas what I can do is, by going in live, it takes all the bridles and harnesses off, all the bridles and harnesses of doubt and inferiority and comparison.